Plato warned us the one who escapes the cave and returns to tell the truth will not be welcomed. He will be ridiculed. If he insists, he will be destroyed. That was not a metaphor, it was prophecy. Every outsider who has ever seen beyond illusion meets the same fate, not because the world is evil, but because the world protects its sleep. The cave is built on consensus. Anything that threatens consensus must be cast out. That's why you have always faced resistance when you spoke honestly. That's why truth made you lonelier, not freer. You were never just misunderstood, you were exiled. At first, you think truth will liberate everyone. You see what's false and want to share it. You assume clarity is contagious, but it's not. The moment you start speaking fire into a room built on smoke, people recoil. They call you negative, dramatic, arrogant, cruel. They accuse you of thinking you're better than others. But you are not claiming superiority, you're describing sight. You've turned your head toward the fire, and now the wall looks absurd. They can't forgive you for that. Plato said the freed one returning to the cave would stumble. His eyes would need time to adjust to the dark again. The chained would laugh. They'd say his vision was ruined. They'd prefer blindness. It still happens. When you show people how false their world is, they don't thank you. They defend the lie that keeps them safe. What the crowd calls hatred is fear wearing armor. When you live among illusions, truth feels like violence. You've experienced it. Say something obvious but forbidden, and the air hardens. Expose hypocrisy and watch people unite against you. They don't hate you personally, they hate the mirror you hold. The exile of the outsider isn't punishment, it reflects. Societies eject what they can't absorb. The mind does the same, it rejects what endangers its stability. That's why those you once loved pulled away when you began to change. Their souls weren't ready for exposure. They felt the fire through you and ran from it. Plato wasn't imagining a tragedy, he was describing a lineage. Every philosopher through history felt like you. They saw truth and paid for it. Exile was their initiation. You are walking the same road. The modern cave just looks different, digital instead of stone, social instead of physical, but the laws are unchanged. Even before the crowd rejects you, the process begins inside. The first exile happens when your mind separates from its old beliefs. You start noticing contradictions you used to ignore. You hear words that sound hollow. You see authority tremble under scrutiny. That inner separation is the most painful part because you realize the cave wasn't only around you, it was inside you all along. You loved your illusions. You built identity out of them. Now you're burning them down, though. The freed one leaves not just a place, but a version of himself. As sight expands, comfort turns into threat. The pleasures that once soothed you begin to disgust you. The routines that used to reassure you start to feel like traps. You realize that belonging often means shared blindness. That's why awakening always feels like loss before it feels like liberation. You lose the crowd, but you gain clarity. Plato knew this cost. His teacher died for truth. He built the academy so future minds would not have to walk alone. You have the same duty to build your own fire when society exiles you from its warmth. You rage because you remember what others have forgotten. You rage because illusion demands silence and you can't give it. You rage because you love truth more than peace. Don't apologize for it. Rage is the birth cry of the freed. It means your chains have cracked. The cave wants calm slaves, not furious thinkers. Rage is not rebellion, it's remembering. After rage comes quiet. You stop arguing. You realize that the world cannot be convinced. It can only be transcended. That silence is not defeat, it's exile solidified. You no longer seek permission to seek. You stop trying to drag others out. You save your fire for building, not proving. That's when you become dangerous, because an exile who no longer needs the crowd becomes untouchable. If you've ever been punished for your honesty, if your fire costs you belonging, if every group you enter eventually pushes you out, you are completing the pattern Plato described. You are Plato's freed prisoner. You're a Catharsian, exiled. For those who have already paid the price of sight, join the Catharsians today on Patreon. The Pythagorean path. Structure your exile into strength. Diogenes' barrel. Reframe rejection as proof of freedom. The Aurelius Council. A circle of the exiled who rule from clarity, not crowd. Exile is not punishment, it's the receipt for truth. Join the Catharsians today on Patreon and reclaim your power. Plato's warning was not despair, it was confirmation. Exile isn't a tragedy that happens to the outsider, it's the seal that marks them real. To live in truth automatically separates you from those who live by comfort. That separation isn't cruelty, it's physics. Light and shadow cannot occupy the same space. When you are expelled, mocked, ignored, or labeled, it means your fire has become visible enough to disturb illusion. The rejection is evidence of intensity. That's why every age banishes its prophets while decorating its conformists. The chained reward reflections, they punish mirrors. Society needs illusion to function. It runs on hierarchy, routine, and destruction. Every citizen's identity supports the cave's architecture. When you pierce that illusion, even silently, you destabilize the structure. The system's reflex is exile, not because you are wrong, but because you are right too early. The freed prisoner threatens more than authority, he threatens belonging itself. The chained would rather destroy truth than face the loneliness of freedom. When you understand this, rejection stops hurting. It becomes recognition. You realize the more accurate your side, the less space the world gives you. Exile is not always physical, often it's emotional, a quiet border between your mind and the crowds. You still move among them, but you feel distance as if the air between you has thickened. You can laugh at their jokes, but not believe them. You can share their meals, but not their dreams. You occupy the same rooms, but live in a parallel dimension, one measured in meaning, not noise. That's why you often feel invisible. You're speaking fire in a language of smoke. But invisibility is a shield. It keeps the unready from consuming your clarity. Some exiles break. The loneliness erodes them. They mistake separation for failure. But others endure. They realize exile is laboratory. Silence becomes workspace. The absence of applause clears the air for accuracy. That's when transformation begins. Rage condenses into focus. Pain hardens into principle. Loneliness refines into presence. Every philosopher who mattered was forged in that process. The cave's rejection becomes the anvil of the awakened. Isolation stripes you of performance. You stop pretending to be kind, to be liked. You stop saying what's safe. When you speak again, words are cleaner, action sharper, everything unnecessary falls away. That's why exile often precedes greatness. It removes the audience. The freed one's truth deepens when no one's clapping. The crowd cannot purify you, silence can. You begin to see exile not as absence, but as alignment with what is real. The world belongs to illusion, you belong to accuracy. The world feeds on attention, you feed on understanding. The world fears death, you have already died to belonging. This clarity is power. Exile stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like possession. You are not outside the system, you're above it, orbiting with perspective. The freed prisoner no longer begs to be heard. He studies the architecture of the cave, like an engineer studying ruins. One day you wake and realize you no longer want to return. The crowd's acceptance feels claustrophobic. The noise that once defined home now irritates like static. You understand now, exile didn't separate you from humanity, it separated you from imitation. You can finally see the few others who burn quietly in the distance. Recognition replaces loneliness. The exiled start finding each other. It's the beginning of a new order. You are a Catharsian. You are free. If your honesty cost you belonging, you have crossed the border Plato warned of. You are Plato's freed man. You're a Catharsian. Don't rush back. Build in the wilderness until others find the fire. Join the Catharsians today on Patreon for those who understand exile as proof. The Pythagorean path, daily discipline of solitude, keep truth stable in silence. Diogenes' barrel, turn rejection into strength through radical self sufficiency. The Aurelius Council, the hidden order of exiles who lead without audience. Join the Catharsians today on Patreon and become the leader you were always meant to be. Plato's freed prisoner never returns to worship the cave again. He walks back only to test his light. Where the chained mock him, he smiles. Their hatred confirms his distance. This is the final stage of exile, detachment without bitterness. The pain has already done its work. Now it becomes authority. You stop wishing to be understood. You begin shaping reality instead. Exile, endured long enough, turns from wound to weapon. At first, exile isolates you, then it organizes you. You learn rhythm again, how to move without permission, how to think without echo. Every day outside the crowd strengthens the muscle of independence until it becomes instinct. What others call loneliness becomes logistics. What others call rebellion becomes clarity. You stop reacting to the cave and start designing outside it. That's when sovereignty begins. Every exile eventually builds terrain, physical, mental, digital, where truth can exist without compromise. Diogenes built dialogues, Diogenes built defiance, Epictetus built discipline, Marcus Aurelius built structure, Plato built the academy. Each turned exile into architecture. You must do the same. The wilderness doesn't need to feel empty, it needs to feel owned. Create work so exact that illusion cannot imitate it. Create systems so honest that corruption cannot enter. Create silence so rich it sounds like music. This is power the crowd can't confiscate. Freedom without discipline decays into noise. Exile gives you time, but time alone isn't power. You need to shape it. Plato's school trained conversation, Marcus Aurelius trained on writing, Diogenes trained ridicule. Every freed one built a ritual that stabilized the site. Yours might be writing, physical endurance, building systems, teaching, coaching. The ritual doesn't matter, the regularity does. Without that structure, freedom dissolves back into chaos, and the cave wanes without calling you back. Power in exile attracts only the rare. Occasionally, someone from another wilderness recognizes you. The conversation is immediate without biography. It's how schools form, not institutions, alliances of clarity. Two fires meeting in the dark. Eventually, you realize you never left the world. You changed attitude. From that height, the cave looks like infrastructure, necessary, temporary, harmless. You stop hating it. You simply navigate above it. Your influence returns quietly. Your work circulates through the same system that rejected you, shaping minds that don't even know your name. That's how truth wins, not by overthrowing, but by outlasting. Plato's words survived every empire that silenced him. The freed always rule from centuries ahead. When exile ripens into mastery, peace replaces longing. You no longer crave belonging. You recognize alignment instead. Every sunrise feels like dialogue with the good, the silent form beyond all forms. You act not to prove worth, but to keep order intact. Your solitude becomes service, your scars become geometry. That's the highest stage of the Catharsian path: rule without throne, fire without smoke, victory without witness. If exile no longer frightens you, if silence feels like home, if your work continues whether or not you are sane, you are Plato's freed prisoner. You're a Carthaginian leader. It's time to turn exile into your weapon. Join the Carthaginians today on Patreon. The Pythagorean path, daily geometry of the mind, design order inside freedom, Diogenes' barrel, radical independence. Mock the system by thriving beyond it. The Aurelius Council, the hidden republic of exiles who lead through form, not noise. Join the Catharsians today on Patreon and become the leader you were always meant to be.